Once again, his Football Morning in America column was must-read material from NBC Sports. Peter King back here on the show. How are you, Peter?
Rich, everything's going okay. Thank you. How about you?
Are you in Indy yet or no?
No, Indy is my I don't do Indy for very long. I'm a 48-hour Indy guy.
Right.
All day Friday, all day Saturday, go home Sunday, and I probably should do more, but I don't know. I basically want to see the quarterbacks and want to touch base with about 40 people, and then I vamoose.
And then there's always, it's not just about, obviously, the weekend, about the on-field drills. It's really what's going on behind the scenes in many different ways. And part of the reason why I wanted to have you on is to suss out what you're hearing about the competition committee that's going to start having a conversation about what happened this past season and whether it merits changing anything to avoid what happened before, despite whatever unintended consequence might come from a rule change or proposal. From what you wrote and from what I'm hearing as well, that the outrage over the NFC Championship game has subsided and nothing is going to be changed in the rule book. What do you think,
right.
Peter?
Yeah, which I think is absolutely outrageous. I think that multiple members of the competition committee have basically said, well, there's not we'd be opening up a can of worms in essence. I think that's what John Elway said not long after this happened. You can't have pass interference a reviewable foul. Why can't you? I mean, and these other ones, Judy Batista tweeted today that somebody, inside the league, whatever, I pick a name, Troy Vincent, Rich McKay, I have no idea, said that, every time there'd be a touchdown run in a crucial time, coach would throw the challenge flag and say, I challenged that touchdown run. And there could be an offensive hold on the play. No. That's not what you do. If you challenge a play that is essentially a judgment call, if you challenge that, you have to say, I am challenging X. Not, hey, go and look at this play and find something. No, that's Bush League, and that should never happen. And honestly, Rich, I think it is categorically absurd that people are saying, well, okay, the wrong team might have gone to the Super Bowl because of a call that we could have done something about if it was reviewable. The wrong team might have gone to the Super Bowl, but we don't want to open the can of worms. What would you open the can of worms for?
I was going to say,
it's absurd.
In terms of what was discussed and the outrage and that what people felt, and one of the most passionate communities for football, certainly in terms of watching the game and people being into the sport, for that city to be alienated, what is more of a can of worms? A situation that's an unintended consequence of a pass interference penalty that would be reviewed incorrectly, or what we just saw in the NFC Championship game?
Look,
I don't
get it. If the NFL does nothing about this, I'll tell you what, I hope next year in a championship game that a play happens that's obviously miscalled and it causes another team another potentially wrong team to get to the Super Bowl. It's just, I mean, I'm speechless if they say there's nothing they can do. Now, Rich McKay is a pragmatist. Okay, for those who don't know Rich, president of the Atlanta Falcons, longtime chairman of the competition committee, a responsible, smart guy who wants to see the game officiated correctly and fairly. For all the people who criticize the competition committee, these guys devote time and they want to see the thing done fairly, mostly. Although I'm befuddled by those who would say you don't want to open that can of worms. We'll figure out how to deal with the can of worms. But I would only say this: Rich McKay, pragmatist, I'm sure, is looking at this and saying, "There's no way I can get 24 votes for this." Well, if you want to say that, then say that, and put the blame on the teams in the NFL that don't want to fix an obvious, gigantic potential error looming again in another elimination game down the road.
And Peter, you also know, as does Rich, knows how it works in the membership and the competition committee, is that sometimes it takes years to get the 24 votes. You've got to start the process of putting people on the record who's voting for it and voting against it, and somebody who votes against it the next year suddenly votes for it, in the same way that we see the Pro Football Hall of Fame. 1 year you're not Hall of Fame worthy, depending on what was going on in the landscape. 2 years, 3 years down the road, it builds. It builds until you finally get success. So you've got to do something, certainly if there's a fan base that's out there trying to fix a loophole that was the worst can of worms in based on an on-field call that I've seen in the 16 years that I've been covering the NFL with the NFL Network. So I do hope that something is done. What do you think Sean Payton's going to say when he walks in that room? He's on the competition committee. What do you think, Peter?
I think he's going to be strident, and I think he is going to say, "Gentlemen, this is something we can fix." And Rich, you just made the point that I would make 100 times out of 100, okay? And that is this. Do you remember for years there would be maybe replay would fall short in some form or another? This would have been back really in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
You know, replay would fall short. And then they would say, okay, we've got 18 votes, blah, blah, blah. And the people covering the meeting would figure out who are the teams that are voting against it, and you go ask them why. And it's the exact same thing here. Let's get a straw vote in the room to find out what teams say we want to fix this problem, and then find out the teams that say we don't want to fix the problem. And then let's start ratcheting up the pressure on them. And, Rich, you mentioned the Hall of Fame. I am absolutely fine because I do it all the time. Mm-hmm. If I have a vote for the Hall of Fame, because there's only 48 votes and you've got to get 80% to get in, at least to get in. I'm fine with defending my vote. I have no problem with defending my vote, pro or con. But what this is going to allow NFL teams to do is to hide behind anonymity, which, in my opinion, does nobody any good. And it certainly doesn't do the game of football any good.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.